Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 20 of Lessons Learned. I was going to say it's like 2 decades, but that's not right because that's years. And I couldn't think of like another word for decade for like 20.
Dodeca. Like a dodecahedron's 20-sided.
Welcome to the dodecahedronth episode of Lessons Learned. I'm Dillon.
And I'm Evan. And today, we don't really have an argument from Jordan Peterson. Anyways, today, Jordan Peterson will begin to show us what acting like a hero looks like and how our culture, or all cultures, relies on myths and the heroes in those myths as examples for how to act. Specifically, he'll dive into how the Bible provides multiple examples of heroism for the West.
Sounds cool.
Yep.
I'm excited to see what happens. So, I didn't think of something interesting to say to tie into what Evan said, and we didn't get any comments about the last question we asked. So, here's something interesting. We have a new member on our show. This is Johnny the Walrus. His pronouns are he, him, and Walrus. This is obviously from Matthew Walsh's great book, Johnny the Walrus. But he provides a level of commentary that I don't think neither one of us could ever achieve.
That's true.
And that's my reference of pop culture of the day.
Look at that. That's nice.
So
That's good stuff.
you go ahead.
Okay. We have a little bit of an introduction.
Mm-hmm.
It's not very much because he talks about a decent bit in the intro and then he doesn't really use it yet for what we'll be going over today, so I just skipped it.
Yeah.
So we're gonna start off old school with a quote. Failure. Well, let's actually talk about what we talked about last week.
We're not going
a little
old
bit.
school.
Well, just to refresh real fast.
Okay. Yeah.
We talked about how you always have to face the unknown,
Yep.
no matter what,
And tell the truth.
yeah, and the two ways to avoid the unknown were the adversary, or the adversary is like the big version, and then there's the decadent, who thinks that like everything's meaningless basically,
Yep.
and then the fascist,
Yeah.
who identifies with order all the way.
So if you didn't see that, there's a link down below to go to our YouTube channel. It's actually the YouTube channel. It's below this video.
Yep.
And if you're listening,
Go to YouTube.
disregard any of that. Oh yeah, if you're listening, go to YouTube.
Yeah. So that's what we were talking about the past couple weeks, and now we're going to talk about the good way to approach the unknown, which is the hero.
So this is like the America to the USSR, if we're going for war heroes.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That works.
I had to make it continuous from last week's episode.
Right. Oh, because we did talk about the Soviets. Yeah.
That was the thumbnail.
Yeah, it was. I don't make those. So, anyways, first quote: failure to transcend group identification is, in the final analysis, as pathological as failure to leave childhood. So, he's just saying it's really bad to not be able to move past your group identity.
Okay.
The same way that it's really bad to not move out of childhood.
Oh, okay. So is this kind of like reminiscent of like I know this is going to be similar reference to like childhood, but like high school group of friends and you move on to college, but you never really want to move on from that idea in that group.
Yeah.
Oh, so like the stuck in the past kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like heavy nostalgia.
Yeah.
We're seeing that a lot these days.
We are.
Yeah. That's like a trend.
Yes.
That's
so
uncanny.
And so, yeah, that's kind of the point of, I think, what he's doing with this chapter with the hero is how to move out of that group identification.
Okay.
And stuff like that. So
is that group identification just for being stuck in the past, or is that group identification for any group? Like the ability to move out of any group you're in?
It would be any group.
Okay.
Like, even if you, I mean, it's just pretty much not being willing to face the unknown and just like sticking with the rules that
The
your group tells
comfort
you.
of
Yeah.
the known in your group. Okay.
Yeah. So
Gotcha.
the group it can be a nostalgic thing, but
Mhm.
it can also be just like your friend group or something.
Sure. Okay.
He also says in the intro that the myth of the hero is like easy to say, but it's hard to understand the kind of depth of what it means. So I think that's going to be kind of the goal of what his this chapter's about.
I feel like that's, and I'm sure, I know you'd mention the Bible, but I feel like that's an easy topic to dive into for Jesus.
Yep.
Really easy to say, oh, he died for our sins.
Yeah.
But
that's what we'll focus on.
Okay, good. Awesome. This is going to be a good one then.
Yeah. We'll focus on Jesus, on Moses, like the Exodus story, 10 Commandments.
Oh.
So
we're going into it.
So
Check.
Let's define a hero.
Okay.
So as I said, just to say it again, the hero is like the third mode of adaptation other than the decadent and the fascist. Being the hero is rare because it's voluntary and like sacrificial, like you're putting yourself in danger.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we can see in today's world.
Yep.
So I want to ask you this. Yes, or you only have to say yes or no for this. Do you think that animals can be? Well, let's not go down that way. Let me ask the question that I was planning on asking.
Okay.
What is it that makes us different from animals?
You know, to quote a friend from our men's breakfast this morning, an observation he made was that we really like good food.
Yeah, I do.
And animals lick their butts.
Okay.
So there must be something about us, good food, that animals just don't understand.
Okay.
Which is a crude summarization of his point. My point is I think the ability to create beyond our means.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
Oh, sure.
Go for it.
And maybe I said that incorrectly. I was trying a new word that's not new to me, but
no, I think it made sense. But
okay, so then my point is that we need shelter, but this house isn't just shelter. It's like a home, right? Whereas animals will just take shelter. And an animal needs to eat. Well, a lion just eats meat, right? But we don't just eat meat. We season it like, smoked brisket. That is far beyond what we need, but it's something enjoyable. It's this level of creation. And I mean, I firmly believe as God the Creator created us in His image, we are innately desiring the outlet of creativity. And we can see that through like art and, and don't even try to define art, music, visual arts, etc. But I think creating without that being a necessity, because we've seen like orangutans create quote unquote tools, sharpen sticks and stuff. But I mean creation beyond what is necessary, I think is really a huge defining feature. Not the only one, but
you're not far off from where he's gonna go with it. He says that the spirit of man, so the thing that makes us men, or people, whatever, is our ability to voluntarily face the unknown and update the way that we see the world.
Okay.
Like because of that, so that we can adapt and stuff. He points out that Greeks saw reason as the thing that defines man from animal.
Okay.
Being able to reason, which I think is along the same lines of what you were saying with creating.
Sure.
Being able to abstract as well.
I feel like a lot of those things are very heady.
Yeah. Well, here's the fun thing.
Okay.
Is he talks about the Judeo-Christian, like spirit of man, what makes us different from animals.
Okay, sure.
The Judeo-Christian version is more so the capacity to create and transform as made in the image of God.
There it is.
So
sweet relief.
Good job.
I felt like those first couple, they're not wrong. I just felt like they were rather heady.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the difference between man and animal? Well, I can do long division. Yeah, sure.
I think they meant more than long division, but yeah. I see
No,
what you're
but
saying.
yeah, exactly. It's just like,
Like higher mental capacity.
yeah, pick any higher mental capacity. I can drive a car. Yeah, I can I can I can take a one car engine and apply what I learned from that one to another one to learn how to fix problems. Yeah, an animal couldn't do that, but like I feel like there's such a general point.
Mm-hmm.
Who created the car?
Yeah.
We did. The creation of the car had to exist before the problem of the car.
Yeah. And I lost my train of thought.
Oh, okay.
Classic.
I would almost venture to say that reason had to be created before the questioning of reason.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, I know what I was going to say.
Okay.
In his Genesis lectures, Jordan Peterson talks about man being different because we can create.
Yeah.
And part of that is actually our opposable thumbs. Is like we were designed to create.
I think it took a little more than an opposable thumb, but yeah.
Sure, but he means like mentally we are kitted out to create. Physically we are.
Almost like there was a creator.
And we're in his image.
Us
yep.
In his specific image.
So
how strange.
we can talk about life as a game.
Mm-hmm.
We learn how to act out the rules, according to him. So this is kind of the progression. We act out the rules.
Okay.
Then we learn what those rules are. We can like make them explicit. And this would be like playing a game as a kid.
Sure.
And like you're playing to rules. Or you're playing it a certain way. And then you end up making rules for the game.
Okay.
And then once you make the rules, you can modify the rules to make the game better.
Okay, so this is discussing quite literally the creation of a game.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought this was talking about like a pre-existing game, and I was like, that's not.
No.
Okay.
And life's the same way. He says the game itself at its first stages is played at the procedural level. The rules remain implicit. Once a representation of the game has been established, then the game can be shared, and later the rules themselves can be altered. So that's kind of part of our ability to abstract and create.
Yeah,
so we can modify the world. So
right.
These are the things that the hero can do.
Okay.
And he doesn't say this implicitly, but knowing where it goes, kind of his point here is the hero can face the unknown, create new rules to make life better.
Yeah.
So there you go. Now we can talk about like defining what good means.
Oh. Okay.
And he focuses from here on out for a decent bit of the rest of the episode on Christianity in the Bible. Mm-hmm. He says that Western religion helps us to understand what is good. That's kind of the tradition that we come from in the West.
Sure.
Is Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where our idea of good comes from. So we're going to talk about Moses now and the Ten Commandments. Mm-hmm. He says a list straightforwardly and simply defines what constitutes acceptable behavior and what does not.
Yeah, okay.
He says this is the most basic form of explicit moral philosophy. Is just a list of do's and don'ts.
Okay.
That's like the most simple form you can get.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the why.
Right.
It's not really adaptable. It's kind of just like do this, don't do that.
Okay.
That's going to matter in a minute.
Oh boy.
So let's talk about Moses and Exodus. So for those who don't know the Exodus story, pretty much Moses is a guy that ends up freeing the Israelites from like pretty much slavery in Egypt. And he works with God, or maybe more so for God, to get
God
them.
Works through him.
Yeah. And Moses gets them out of Egypt. And then they're in the desert for a really long time. And in this time period, Moses ends up getting the Ten Commandments from God. So that's a major event that we'll talk about. And then another important thing is while they were in the desert for a long time, Moses was working as like a judge for people's problems. Like if people had disagreements, they would go to him and be like, yo, we're upset about this. Figure it out for us. And so he would act like as a judge and decide who should be ruled in favor of. So that's for everyone to have some backstory.
Good old backstory.
He says that since he acted as judge for so long, he had to determine what was right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So this is that procedural going through the game.
Mm-hmm.
Through this process, he gained moral knowledge.
Okay.
And so he became revolutionary because he taught a new mode of being.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, and this is incorrect because Peterson thinks that God giving Moses the Ten Commandments is more of a metaphor where Moses is like able to abstract this new set of rules that he figures out is right and wrong.
But doesn't God quite literally carve the Ten Commandments into stone?
Well, and like, you know how his face glows? Moses is after kind of seeing God and he comes back down from the mountain and stuff.
Yep.
And he has to wear a veil. Peterson said something about how that idea was he had so many like possibilities because he had reached kind of a new cognitive understanding of morality that like it was actually like coming off of him. But anyways, I'm just gonna go to the quote.
That's something special.
It's an interesting interpretation.
That's an
well, it's an abstract interpretation.
Can we get a version of the Bible that's like JPV, Jordan Peterson version?
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
it's just Jordan Peterson, but not current Jordan Peterson. Like
this Jordan Peterson,
1998, 1999 Jordan Peterson, where he's like, well, if this is what it says, then it must mean this.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
I'd read it. I wouldn't agree, but I would definitely read it.
So the way he phrases it is he says Moses transforms what had previously been custom, embedded in behavior, represented in myth, into an explicit semantic code. So pretty much he's saying like the behaviors of the Ten Commandments were not conscious rules before Moses figured them out.
Well, I don't know how I feel about that. Because isn't there a level?
I just grabbed that mug really weird.
Oh.
It's okay.
The Lollapalooza.
Yeah.
Isn't there like a because we all have a conscience.
Yes.
You know, the Holy Spirit is within us, brothers.
Okay.
So there's kind of this innate understanding of good and bad, right? Wouldn't you say?
It's debatable.
Sure.
I agree that it is, but people do debate it.
Yeah, sure, people debate.
Dude, you're
but they're
spoiling for later in the episode, by the way, because that comes up.
You know continue. What?
Continue.
I've just been reading so much Sherlock Holmes at this point, I can deduce anything.
Right.
So, okay. Now it's hard to continue. You've interrupted my train of thoughts.
That's what I'm here for. I'm here to lose my own train of thought and then bring you down with me.
So,
I did it again.
My problem is that I think the difference.
I did it this way.
You're not. I think the difference between having the Ten Commandments carved in stone and not having them carved in stone is that the law of God is both metaphorically and physically carved in stone. But that didn't dismiss this innate kind of understanding of good and bad. I mean, like this idea of guilt that I feel like often society is like, oh, guilt, that's not, you don't need to feel that. Yes, you should. that is your conscience, that is the Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Saying, hey, friend, don't do that. That's
well,
bad.
And you'll get to hear this tomorrow when you listen to the sermon. But one of the verses in Ecclesiastes talks about how the wise man like has people around him that will rebuke him.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you just have a bunch of people that'll applaud whatever you're doing,
Right.
you're gonna do bad stuff,
Yeah.
and people aren't gonna stop you. And
Well,
what Pastor said was like, if you have real friends, they will be willing to rebuke you and
Yeah.
tell you that what you're doing is dumb.
well, that's why we
And
tell each other we're dumb all the time.
right, exactly. And like not, well, quote unquote friends
Mhm.
that aren't real friends, they're just going to ignore it as much as you're wanting to ignore it.
Well, yeah. Well, and that's the big fall. That's the big downfall. At least in my eyes, what I'm seeing in secular culture, and like when I was at college, like
Mhm.
I was a film major. That who do you think I was surrounded by?
Yeah.
So I definitely saw this idea of, well, one, you don't need to feel guilty. Frivolous sex is great. That's good for you. That guilt, shame, no, that's not bad.
This is what Dylan believes, just so we're clear.
What does that mean? Do you disagree with me?
No, I was just saying that what you were saying wasn't what they were saying.
No,
That's what you're saying.
I didn't understand what you were clarifying. Yeah, no. So
These are Dylan's expressed beliefs.
these are Dylan's expressed beliefs. My point is that they really, really validated anything that fit their narrative, and to really boil the narrative down, it is immediate satisfaction.
Yeah.
That ultimately ends up being short term, requiring more immediate satisfaction, and that creates a falling cycle of like basically addiction with anything that gives you this short-term satisfaction,
Like the
so
dopamine hit.
yeah, so living in that bubble was just not good, and I mean I watched people like constantly fall into confusion because things would get worse, but their friends would tell them it was okay, and I was the one person sitting in the room quietly going, that's not okay. And the off times they would sit down and talk with me, and they'd be like, what do you think? And I'm like, don't do that.
Yeah.
That was a bad idea. Don't do that. And they're like, yeah, I think you're right. But before they could live it, their friends assured them that that bubble was safe. But we can see that in great leaders. George Washington had Hamilton and Jefferson. And you know as well as I do, that discourse was intense. But Washington wanted both Jefferson and Hamilton in his cabinet, directly next to him, as opposing voices, so he could understand opposing views of the country to be a better leader.
Right.
I mean, to be better people, we need soundboards. We need something like devil's advocate.
Yeah.
But to go as far as being a leader, I'd say you have to have it.
Not only for yourself is it important to have people that will rebuke you, but if you want to help your friends, you should totally not just be okay with whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
Like, encourage them, support them when they need that. But if you think they're doing something wrong, don't be afraid of a hard conversation, because that could save them a lot of pain in the future.
Oh, yeah. Big time. I mean, there's been plenty of times in my life where I wish somebody would smack me in the face, but the people that were encouraging me were the people that would have encouraged me and disagree with me today.
Right.
But yeah, the hard conversation's always hard, but I think it also helps to find a friendship. Do you want to be friends with somebody when you bring reality to their doorstep, deny you?
Yeah. And so that's definitely one of the components of being a hero, according to Peterson.
Yeah.
So
cool. We agree.
Yes.
This is amazing. We're getting along so well.
Indeed. So next, I don't know how far we're going to get, by the way.
Okay.
Just heads up. Let's talk about some myths and culture together at the same time. So he says that the myths of a culture are its central stories.
Okay.
So it's the stories that it tells itself. And we've been over this in past episodes, so I won't.
I felt so.
Yeah. he says that mythical narratives demonstrate what should be,
Mm-hmm.
like the ought for the ought problem.
Right.
And so the narratives are usually oriented towards patterns of adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
So like you can learn from the narrative how to act in certain ways that should work, hopefully.
Sure.
And I was going through, these are kind of the points of the myths in a culture.
And he's still applying myth to all myths,
Stories,
and counting Christianity into that.
Yeah.
When you say stories, do you include something like Little Red Riding Hood, or is that
Probably not in this. That's probably too small.
that's too like folklore fable-esque?
Well, I feel like fables can work, but I think we're talking about like the main things we tell ourselves. The main things that we pass on.
I'd say Little Red Riding Hood's a huge generational story. That's why I brought it up. Although I don't think it has like an abstractable moral, at least in the sense Peterson's talking about.
Yeah, and I think he's talking about the ones that we can like emulate and stuff. So I don't know if that one counts there.
Well, I mean, I could eat my grandma and be a wolf, and you could be a small girl. With
No, the grandma is the wolf one.
Yeah.
You're the wolf?
Yeah.
The wolf doesn't eat the grandma. The wolf doesn't eat their own grandma.
No.
You just said you could eat your grandma.
I could eat my grandma, but I myself would turn into a wolf. So therefore making her not my grandma. And you could turn into a little girl with a red cloak. Which technically you can.
Wouldn't you be eating my grandma?
Yeah. But I'm not going to eat your grandma because she's awesome.
Why would you eat your own grandma and then your grandma's now my grandma?
What would Peterson say?
About what?
About the abstraction of this general theme.
That it's bad. I can only assume.
That it's bad.
So I don't know if writing it is.
Sure.
And then kind of the last thing that cultural myths do is they surround the individual. They offer protection from the world, from being overwhelmed by material and spiritual onslaught. So it's kind of that thing about how there's so much that we can see in the world and experience and do. Like there's infinite possibilities pretty much. And the cultural myths can shrink that down into a set amount of things that you can actually act on. That's not so just overwhelming.
Sure.
So that's kind of the characteristics of cultural myths. Let's talk about the hero
in these myths.
In myths, yep.
Little Red Riding Hood.
She probably isn't a hero.
The wolf might be.
So, okay. The highest levels of myths allow us to find meaning within the tragedy of our lives. Does that make sense?
Nope, say it again.
Okay. The highest levels of a myth, like Christianity, as he uses it.
Okay.
The highest levels allow us to find meaning within the tragedy of our lives. So we can find meaning even though life sucks. Because of myths.
I feel like that's a rather interesting way to put it.
I think you'll see what he means as we continue.
Yeah, go for it.
For Western tradition, he says, and it's funny, he kind of says in there, whether you like it or not, for Western tradition, this highest level of myth is Christ. So,
G-Gang, I don't know if we need another Scooby snack to figure this one out.
Oh, man.
The mystery might be solved.
Gang. I like that.
You've never seen Scooby-Doo, have you?
Yes, I've seen Scooby-Doo. I love Scooby-Doo.
Uh-huh.
I haven't watched it in a long time, but I saw it on Cartoon Network and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Boomerang? It was on Boomerang. I watched it on there.
You asked it like it was a question.
Because I couldn't remember.
Anyways.
I didn't do Boomerang that often. Okay. Heroic behavior compels imitation. A hero by definition serves as a model for emulation. I don't know. I think I agree, but I think it's just kind of a platitude maybe. Like it's just kind of obvious.
So wait, say it again.
Heroic behavior compels imitation.
Yeah.
Doing something heroic.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my issue is I don't see the point in the distinction because it's not the only kind of behavior that compels imitation.
No,
Because if you see someone doing something bad,
but find success in it.
then you might be compelled to do that.
Correct.
So I see what he's saying, but I don't know if it's useful to
Yeah.
point out.
Well,
Except, I mean, it helps him make his point.
sure, but
But
yeah, I mean, no, I totally agree. I think there's a certain extent in which Peterson likes to define things or kind of come to a conclusion, but it seems almost unnecessary, or came to the conclusion with like such a deep dive into
Yeah.
the content that it was like, well, yeah, if you want to take the meaning from it.
well, and I think it might just be a useful. I think it can be obvious, but it's a useful stepping stone to think about
Okay.
to frame your mind around. Is that
Mm.
the heroic behavior is something that we want to imitate? Is like, yeah, that makes sense. But I think he's trying to get you to keep it in mind
I
as we
think
talk about
I
this.
think you made a good point that like heroic behavior isn't the only one that people even not just will but desire to imitate. Some people just desire to imitate whatever brings success.
Right.
And we see that unfortunately all too often. But I going back to the previous thing that he pointed out, which is that like at the end of the day, Christ, the story of Christ, the sacrifice of Christ, and everything that is, one might say the religion of Christianity
Yeah.
is of the utmost importance and sets the highest groundwork for morals, not only in our country but psychologically speaking.
It's
tracks.
it's interesting because I'm taking an early medieval Christianity class right now for people that know, or for people that don't know.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you did.
No.
Yep, because I talked about that essay I had to write.
No, that doesn't essays.
Right.
Is that like
I only spent all week talking about it.
only came in my room 5 times?
Yeah.
Does this make sense?
Yeah. Anyways, he was talking about how Christianity spread in ancient Rome,
Okay.
and how even when there was kind of a mystery cult vibe for some people, because like with the Eucharist, which is the Jesus's blood and bread, or like the bread turning into his body and the wine turning into his blood.
So the Eucharist are people that believe that?
The Eucharist is like that ceremony kind of,
Oh.
or kind of, yeah, I think it's a ceremony. It's not a word that we use. I think it's mostly a Catholic word, but that ceremony,
Okay.
because of things like that. And like, they would say, yeah, I'm having, like his blood and body. And they're like, you guys cannibals or something.
Christianity equals cannibalism?
Right. And then they're talking about like incest stuff. 'Cause if they call they're like all brothers and sisters in Christ.
Yeah.
Everyone is.
Well,
So then it's like they get confused about it. So like there's these misconceptions from the outside. So even though people were like skeptical about it and stuff, Christianity spread because, according to my professor, it was spreading among Romans pretty quickly because they kind of were winning the moral game. Like they had these morals, like you shouldn't be having sex all the time, probably.
and someone was like, what an interesting concept. Please tell me more.
Yeah, they were kind of like, I think you're kind of right about that.
Yeah.
And it's just some of the different morals. So it's really interesting that just the morals, people kind of, it resonated with them and it was able to grow that way.
Well, I think it's because like, okay, if we have a creator, let's live in this world for a second.
Yeah.
Imagine we have a creator.
Okay.
And he has a set line of rules, right? He knows what is good because as a creator of a being like us, he would have to be incredibly intelligent, incredibly powerful, correct? Would he or would he not instill those ideas within the beings he creates? So with that being
ruining my question.
With that being said, disregarding this idea of bringing the morals to the table, you already have that innate understanding, as I brought up before. Now somebody comes to the table saying, hey, your creator wants you to follow these rules.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it resonates with you.
Right.
What a concept. Perhaps, maybe, it's true.
Indeed.
And what was your question? Go ahead.
It was going to be later. I'm going to wait. You have to wait for it. Maybe you'll forget.
You'll ask me the question, I'll be like, I don't know.
So,
Can I phone a friend?
no,
No. Okay.
unless it's yourself. Um,
I'll phone Johnny.
oh man, I don't know what to talk about next. I kind of have a plan.
He actually has notes in front. Like, I have the notes he made in front of me. And
He has a very abridged version.
I don't know where he is anymore.
Yeah. So he makes the claim that we progress from conceptualizing the hero as a character to, so like Jesus.
Yeah.
We go from thinking about Jesus as this character that is heroic
Okay,
to conceptualizing what it means to be a hero.
Okay.
So first we can see this hero in the narrative,
Mm-hmm.
and we can be like, yeah, that's the hero. And then we can kind of, and it's this abstracting from stories as we've talked about before, but we can look at the hero and we can say, okay, what is making him a hero? Like, what is it that, for the sake of what he's talking about, what is making Jesus a hero?
Are you asking, or is this rhetorical?
It's rhetorical. I'm saying that's the process that we do.
Right. Well, I think it's funny because Christ literally calls us to strive to be like him.
Yeah. I'm sure that's...
So, I mean, it proves Jordan Peterson's point, but it proves it in such a meta way that it, like...
Dude, Jesus is meta.
I feel like it undermines Jordan Peterson's point of, like, looking anywhere else other than Christianity. Does that make sense?
But he agrees that you should look
Yeah.
to Christianity.
No, but I mean, he's looked at other places before.
Yeah.
And now as a Christian,
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense to make that statement. But again, this is 1998, 99 Jordan Peterson.
We have the book right here.
Okay. We will tell you exactly the year this was
99.
1999 Jordan Peterson. So, I guess we should always open the episode with that, but
What?
that this is 1999 Jordan Peterson, and it doesn't apply to the now Christian Jordan Peterson.
I guess, but people can see the book.
But my point is I feel like if you say, hey, this is the hero of a story, look to them, but the hero in that story says, look to me as your guide and strive to live your life like me.
I don't think it undermines. I think it's just doubling up.
I guess it doubles up, but I feel like it undermines any point he made that wouldn't relate to Christianity as the ultimate, like, goal or answer. Does that make... Do you get what I'm getting at?
I think so.
Because, like, he brings up other mythologies, and he's like, yeah, these other mythologies are good, and they have other things.
But what I will say is you can learn stuff from outside of the Bible.
I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying that at the end of the day, the Bible, as I like to call it, is the ultimate, like, that is the answer. That's the book. That's the rule book. That's the everything. I just thought it was funny that Jordan Peterson's like,
doubling up.
Jesus is the hero. And then the hero in the story that he says that we should look to says, walk like me, which is, like, I feel like such a meta thing in the narrative of this book. Yeah.
There's a section on here where he kind of says Jesus is like the second Moses because he does if you accept the Moses thing that I talked about earlier about how he took the procedural and made it the explicit list, Jesus, like, does that again, but from the list to the spirit. I don't think it's worth going over.
Yeah.
I think we'll just kind of disagree, but
okay, so
I'll let you know they talked about it.
And I will let you know I disagree.
Yeah. So now we're going to talk about discerning good and evil.
This is on my notes.
It is. That's why I let you know.
Question regarding innate understanding of good. Is this the question?
We'll get there. So he says that at first, and this is something I disagree with, at first it is easier to identify what is evil and what should be controlled. So that's kind of what the Ten Commandments did. Was
Okay.
they said, here's the things you shouldn't do. And then he says you need a certain clarity of spirit to determine what good is. I don't think it's easier.
I have to disagree, right? Because that goes against with exactly what I've said thus far. The innate sense of good and wrong.
Right.
Right and wrong.
Yeah, I don't think that evil is necessarily easier to identify. I think that that's why so many people
No,
can understand like beauty.
No, dude, wait, hold on.
Okay.
I agree with you, disagree with him.
Hold on to what?
The table, I don't care. Thank you. The seat of your pants. So, I don't think evil at all is easier to...
Is it the seed?
Seat.
Okay.
Your butt is what that means.
That's
the
a
seat
dumb...
of your pants, your butt.
I don't like that analogy. What is that? It's not an analogy.
No, it's... Oh, you made me not know what it's called.
Metaphor.
Yeah.
Aphorism.
Metaphor. So...
Simile.
You're done. So, no, I think it is easier to discern good from evil. Like, I think it's much easier to see what is good than it is to see what is evil. And here's my point.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. If we look at the culture of secularism, there's a lot of evil things in there, right? The idea of going out and having frivolous sex all the time. That's a not healthy thing. That is, to push that idea onto youth is an evil thing to do.
Okay. I'd agree with the pushing on part.
Okay. That's not easy to see. Because the pleasures of sex outweigh what just culture says, hey, you shouldn't do that. Yeah, but it makes me feel good. So what's the bad part? Yeah, there's repercussions, sure, but what doesn't have repercussions? What's the bad part?
What about when you're making a set of rules? Do you think it's easier to make rules regarding
what is good and like what to do?
Versus just making rules about what not to do?
Yes.
You think it's easier?
Yes.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, I will. Okay. Remember Ben Shapiro's example about the pencil factory?
Yeah.
I'm going to use the pencil factory.
Okay.
Okay. What is easier? If you want to get a worker to take a pencil and sharpen it.
Okay.
What's easier? To say, take the pencil, put it in the sharpener, count to 5 seconds, and place it in the box. That is a to-do. Or would it be easier to say, don't put the backside of the pencil in the sharpener. Don't drop the pencil.
Sure.
Don't. I mean, you could go down the whole list until eventually.
So I guess it would be like, though, if we're talking about morality, is it easier to say, don't covet your neighbor, or to think about saying, like, love your neighbor?
Love your neighbor.
As if they were
just what's the thing to do? And then why? I think the why is very important. But what to do? What should you do? That's the easiest. I don't care what not to do. I mean, like, okay, so, and I'm going to struggle because coming up with a set of rules for morals is a little trickier. Okay, so don't stab someone. Don't kick someone.
Yeah.
Don't hit someone. Or you could just say, be kind to a person.
But couldn't you just easily say, don't hurt anyone?
Sure.
I don't know. Whatever.
But then, okay, so if you don't hurt, my point, if you don't hurt anyone, what do? Then what? Okay, so I'm not going to hurt, then I'll ignore them.
Yeah.
But you also shouldn't ignore them. Okay, so then say, don't interact with them negatively.
I think we're going down the road of which one's better.
Sure.
I don't know which one's easier to arrive to. I do think, though, that at the very least, it's not easier to identify evil.
No.
At the very least.
At the very least.
But his argument is that that's the case, and that's why the Old Testament has the letter of the law, and the New Testament has the spirit of the law, aka Jesus. And for people that don't know, I've been using the phrase spirit of the law pretty frequently.
It actually drives me up a wall.
But Jordan Peterson says it word for word. So I'm just saying what he said. Here's my question. but you probably already answered it, so whatever. Can you know what good and evil are without being taught? I was excited for this question. I'll have you know.
Can I phone a friend?
No, you don't get a friend.
Johnny. Can you know what good and evil is without being taught?
Yeah.
I think there's an extent in which you could argue, to play devil's advocate against what I've been saying, I think there's an extent in which you could argue that no, you couldn't know what good and evil is if you weren't taught, because if you were thrown in the middle of a war or thrown in the middle of the woods and had to fend for yourselves and stuff, what level of good and evil is there, right? Like this idea of growing up orphan and in this strange environment and stuff. And yeah, you could arrive to that conclusion. But I would argue in a vacuum like that, in what case are you explicitly putting into your environment something that could be good or evil?
I think I would just disagree, though.
Okay.
Even with your devil's advocate.
Mm-hmm.
I like what C.S. Lewis says about it. And he talks about it in Mere Christianity and kind of an Abolition of Man.
Mm-hmm.
I'll start with the Abolition of Man. He pretty much talks about there is an objective good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
And people try to deny it.
Mm-hmm.
And like he gives an example about this literature book that's teaching kids how to write.
Okay.
And it's saying that like when this one guy says that waterfall is sublime and another guy says like it's pretty, that really the guy's not saying that the waterfall is sublime. He's saying that his own feelings towards the waterfall are sublime.
Okay.
And Lewis is pretty much like, no, he is saying that the waterfall is sublime and he is more right for saying that it is good. The problem with what they're doing is like, it's saying that when we talk about something, it's really just our feelings about that thing.
Yep. Feelings.
That we're reflecting, I guess, onto the thing, or projecting onto the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But he thinks that, I mean, that's kind of the point of a classical education is there are beautiful things, there are good things, and there are bad things. And it's not up to us and our feelings to decide what those are.
Correct.
So that's kind of Abolition of Man. And then in Mere Christianity, he talks about how we are all given a conscience. And I think that's the God-given thing that can, no matter if you're in a war or a forest or whatever, that's what can tell you what's good or bad, in my opinion. It doesn't matter where you are. There's something in us that, and you can suppress it. You can suppress the thing saying, I don't know if you should do this, or like, I kind of feel like this isn't a great thing to do. You can totally push that down until you don't hear it anymore.
Well, and that's the idea behind like extreme liberalism, extreme secular culture, is to all these people that are like, go have frivolous sex. That guilt and shame you feel is real, and they say don't ignore that. Oh, you treated somebody poorly. Well, they deserved it because they had an opposing view.
Or flip it to be empowering.
Yeah, or flip it to be empowering, which is complete and utter denial, not only of the shame and guilt, but of the reality of the actions that were committed.
And what our nature is, which isn't to do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like that.
Okay. I'm glad.
He talks about Piaget a little bit, the difference between morality of constraint, which is that saying what you shouldn't do,
okay.
and morality of cooperation. He also defines it, Piaget did kind of a lot with kids' psychology and their development. He says that a morality of constraint is earlier in development for children because you're saying not to do something and they don't do it because they're scared of the consequences.
Yeah.
That's a morality of constraint. And he says a morality of cooperation is for older kids, and it's following the rules based on mutual consent. They're cooperating with the rules because they can, as you get older, you understand more the importance of the rules instead of just being scared of the consequences of not doing it.
So would that imply people that don't understand rules are stuck in a regressed state of mind?
I don't know. I don't know enough about it to say that that's true.
I wouldn't say that's true.
But to relate it to like the Bible, kind of what he's saying is if as a civilization they were earlier in development, then it was the 10 Commandments were the rules of constraint,
Yeah.
or the morality of constraint, and then Jesus is the one of cooperation.
Gotcha.
So we'll move on to make sure we've started this section, so I want to finish it.
There's another section.
Well, we've started, like, we're in the section that we've already started. I want to finish it.
Finish the section.
Before we move on to another episode. So,
Boo.
I know.
Boo.
Okay, so he says that, or he asks, what principle is rule of spirit rather than law predicated upon? Does that question make sense?
What's predicated?
Based on.
So say it again, but with the word based on.
Okay, it's based. What principle, by what principle is rule of spirit rather than law based upon? Like, what is it that is saying that we should follow the spirit instead of the law? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Am I being clear?
I guess I don't understand what the separation of the spirit and the law.
So, like
Roman law versus like Christian law.
So it would be like
in a spiritual sense.
The spirit of the law is understanding what the point of the laws are.
Oh, the spirit of the law versus the law to like the letter.
Yeah, so like following the rules exactly versus understanding what the point of the rules is.
Okay.
So if you need to like break the rules,
kind of like the speed limit, like if it's 75 but everyone's doing 80, you need to like keep up with everyone else.
Maybe.
Well, that's the idea, because at least in my driver's education, they said if you were going slower than everyone else and it was like causing a hazard,
yeah.
The speed limit,
I guess it just kind of sounds like the way you said it to me made it sound like you're just making an excuse to go faster. But
well,
yes.
if everyone else is going
but
faster.
Yes, it's
to keep the flow of traffic even.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
okay,
it's understanding that. He says the principle that following the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law is predicated on is respect for the innately heroic nature of man, which is assuming that we can improve and adapt and not have to be constrained by the letter of the law, assuming that we can do better than just what the law says and that we can kind of transcend it, I guess, is the way to think about
I feel
it.
like there's a degree of this that's an opposition of like Christian ideology.
Well, there's certainly rules to follow, but he's talking about like, I think, government rules and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, that's what he's discussing.
Like the point of following the spirit of the law instead of the letter of the law is, according to him, that's possible because we as humans have the ability to be heroic.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay.
So we have the ability to act outside of the laws if we need to.
Yeah.
Because we can understand what would actually be more beneficial.
Yeah.
He next talks about the significance of like he calls it the Christian passion, but it's kind of like the Christian goal or the imitating Jesus. Like that's the thing.
Yeah, that's the thing.
The significance of that is that wanting to be like Jesus provides us a model for how to, and I'm just paraphrasing here, because it was a long section.
Yeah.
Wanting to be like Jesus provides us a model for how to live that will make us like the, quote, embodiment of courageous, truthful, individually unique experience or existence.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's what he thinks the importance of the Christian message is. Totally ignores the following God part, but I do think it is a good thing to say that us wanting to be like Jesus moves us towards being the embodiment of courageousness and truthfulness and individual unique existence.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a kind of a good thing to end on.
Yeah.
So
I think it feels almost out of character given the contents of the book so far.
Well, what do you mean? Because
and maybe we're just seeing the conclusion that he has finally come to, and it feels out of character because thus far we've almost been in opposition with him, but the conclusion he comes to makes sense because it's similar enough to the
So
conclusion we live in.
I think the thing is that he's trying to make an abstract explanation of this stuff, and he can get it wrong because he's coming from the wrong angle. But he is a clinical psychologist, and he's really good at being able to take a narrative and create a moral out of it.
Sure.
And so I think he's understanding part of that. Like, that's why I said he's missing the God part.
Yep.
But he's still kind of getting what part of the point of what Jesus did for us is as something to imitate.
I think at the end of it, it's really captivating how we can see 1999 Jordan Peterson and kind of that point of his life and then where he is now, which is like, you can see how this has affected the current Christian Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Yeah. You can see it in 12 Rules for Life and Beyond Order. And
oh, absolutely.
Like, he brings up the same examples and stuff.
I feel like the level of intelligence that Jordan Peterson holds is incredible.
Yeah.
I think he is and the correct words are escaping me, but very important in our lifetime. You know, very important figure in our lifetime and in this kind of era that we live in. And I think he's going to live on beyond his own life. But yeah, I think when you're that smart and you truly seek the truth makes itself known. Capital T.
If you're heroic and willing to face
go into the unknown.
Yeah. Well, and accepting the stuff that you find there.
Yes. Yeah. Did you get everything? Oh, how cute. Yeah. We record these episodes kind of in like a bunch. Sometimes not. And last week we hit 100 subscribers.
We did. Thank you, everybody.
Was awesome. We really, really appreciate everyone's support. We really appreciate you subscribing and watching the videos and just
leaving comments here and there.
Yeah, leaving comments, supporting us. It's been really fun. I'm glad there's 100 people that think we're that interesting.
Yeah, I really didn't expect anything.
Yeah, I really thought we were gonna put videos up here and be like, yeah, hey mom and dad.
Yeah, pretty much.
Hey, church friends.
But we appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's fun. We're learning with you.
Yes, that's the big thing. We're learning with you. Lessons learned. We're bringing lessons that we learned to you. So, like, and even then we're learning as we go. Yeah. In the moment.
Yeah.
So, it's been really fun. We really appreciate your support.
Thank you.
There's no question at the end of this episode.
No.
Because there's no answer from the last one.
Just a big ol' thanks.
Big ol' thank. Big ol' Bobcat. Big ol' thank you, everyone.
Michigan.
That wasn't even Michigan.
I don't know. It's not a Grand Junction thing.
Well, thanks for getting us to 100 subscribers. Evan, you can close it because that's what you've been doing. I don't like it.
Oh, I forgot about that. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions for us or, have any comments for us, we'll totally respond. If you leave them in the comment section below, or if you're on Spotify, if you go on YouTube and leave a comment. But
you can do that?
Yeah.
What?
Well, no, on YouTube.
Oh, I thought you said on Spotify.
No, if you're on Spotify, go to YouTube.
Yeah, if you're on Spotify, go to YouTube
and leave a comment.
Yes.
But yeah, thanks for sticking around if you're here this long. Thanks for 100 subs. We will keep going. Hopefully we might have some new
101 subs.
Yeah. Some new type of content hopefully coming out.
Oh yeah.
We want to do some different stuff. So yeah.
Branch out a little.
Thanks for watching. This has been Lessons Learned.
Bye.
Bye.